Hello everybody, welcome to video number 4 looking at the Robin 400, and this video will concentrate on the LEDs that are available on the X-Touch Mini and how we use X's and O's to program those and control them for us. So if I bring in the camera, which is pointing at my actual X-Touch Mini controller, we can see that they are LEDs around the actual rotary controllers, that as we turn those we can have LEDs working there, and there are LEDs here on the various switches that we can use. I'm not going to bother too much with the ones around the ring. They don't make much sense in the flight simulator anyway. That what does it mean to have your kilohertz pointer pointing that way? It's not really going to indicate anything to you, so hardly worth it. The only thing it might be useful for is how far you've switched one of these dimmer switches, but again you can sort of see that on the screen. The other difficulty is that you've got no way of knowing whether your controller is in layer A or layer B. You can't read that back in A&O, X's and O's or the flight simulator, so you don't know whether you're going to be creating a display for the top or the bottom function. So it doesn't seem worth the effort of putting any control into it. What I have done is I've changed the pattern of the lights for layer A and layer B. So that one is like a fan type approach, and this one is meant to be a single LED that moves around. So it just gives me a quick glance when I can't work out why something's not working. It reminds me whether I'm in layer A or layer B, as another sort of visual clue. And that's all done actually with the software that you can download from Bayringer itself, the X-Touch editor. This is, I can't write to it at the moment because it's connected to X's and O's, so it gives me a dummy one to work with. And really on the here you would load in from the hardware the profile that's stored for the lights from the hardware for layer A, edit it and then dump it back onto the hardware, then do the same for layer B, call it in from the hardware, edit it and dump it back to layer B on the hardware. And on the encoder side of things here, you can change the LED pattern, and you've got these different choices of patterns, so you can explore those and send those to layer A and layer B if you want, but it's effort that's probably not worth making. What I am more interested in is how I control these lights here. This button here is not allocated to anything, it's not programmed at all, but any button you press, as you hold it down, as you press it, it lights up the LED. That's a function of the X-Touch Mini anyway. But what you want to be able to do is to control from X's and O's reading, say, the position of the taxi light. So I can turn on the taxi light and you see that it tells me that it's on or it's off, and it's reading variables to that. In fact, I'll switch it on now from my Stream Deck and that should come to life. There it is. There's the taxi light on, taxi light off. I can do the same for the strobe. I can turn it on and off, and I can do it in the simulator itself as well on the screen with the mouse, and those will light up. So let me show you how that works. Let's get rid of that camera and we shall bring in X's and O's and have a look at how that works. So it's based in the scripting side of things, and you can have automated scripts that run in the background pretty much all the time if you want, and you can have some which are global for the entire, doesn't matter which plane you're running, it'll run this script, and I haven't really found much use for that, to be honest, at the moment, but I've got scripts which are specific to each aircraft. So an aircraft automated script. So I'm currently in the DR400, so this will only work on that aircraft. And so I've written a script called the Robin My LED script for the switches. You can call it whatever you like. And I stored it, if I bring up my editor, in my scripts. You can again store it where you like, but having some kind of system here so you can manage your script groups here. You can create another group and click add, and they work sort of like folders system. So I don't know if you can have structure of my scripts and have another one further down. I haven't tried that yet, but this works for me. So there's my Robin script there. So let's go back to the automated scripts. So when I want to allocate it, I've written the script already, and I would go and find it from my scripts and then the title of it, and then I would add it and it will be there. And you have it marked as a repeating script, and here you tell it how frequently you want it to run in milliseconds. I'm doing it on trust. It says in the manual that if I change that to say 500, it will run once every half second, which will be enough for it to check whether a light switch is on or off. And if I update that, I have faith that it's working. If I go back and come back into it, you'll notice that's gone back to 100. But I don't know if that's now affecting that or not. So, repeating script. You can have one-shot script as well, whether you want it to just run once at the beginning, so you could go through and make sure that all the switches are switched off, or make it cold and dark, or whatever you want at the beginning, or to make sure that when you've finished it, everything's switched off, or whatever. So you can have these one-shot ones. Again, I've not written one of those yet. Yeah, probably will do in a while. Okay, so that's what the how you allocate the scripts to a particular aircraft. So in the script editor, this is the script editor, a quick view around it. Again, so I've shown that you can create a bit of hierarchy structure here. And if you write a new script, you give it a title and you tell it which group it's going to go into. And then you write your script and save it as new. If you do some work on a script that you've already written, this update button will come alive. So let's bring in a script. Let's bring in the Robin one. You can see I've got the ability to update it. And I can, rather than type a script variable in, you can insert it. You can insert a sim event if you need to. You've got various other commands that you can put in. And you've certainly got here, you can also put in the operators for this script language to save you typing things. So sometimes they speed things up and generally stop you misspelling things. So quite a lot that you can actually put in here. I haven't tried every aspect of it, but I've certainly inserted variables and events and some operators in there, and that helps quite nicely. Up here we've got it telling us that this is the compiled script down here, and it's telling that the compile was successful. If I do something silly like lose a bracket, you'll see that it will come up with a hint that the brackets are unbalanced, and it's showing you which I've got one of those too many, I'm missing one somewhere, and let's put it back in again. And now it's happy. So it does check things out for us, so we know that we've got valid script. May not be quite what you wanted to do, but it does a basic test for you. Okay, I will now deal with how this actual particular script works. It's a little bit small on here, so what I'll do is I will shove this out of the way, and I'll use the PowerPoint presentation so the script is a bit larger and I can talk through the syntax of that script. It looks daunting to start with, but actually once you get the hang of it, it's not that bad. Okay, so the first line of my script is looking at the landing light. So this is the variable, so I would use that insert variable function here to put that in here. The dots in between are actual spaces. If you type the space bar, it puts a dot in it. It just makes it visible so we can see where the spaces are, because spaces are significant in this scripting language. So if it's got a space, you type the space bar, it puts a dot. You don't have to put a dot in and type a dot or anything like that. Just type the space bar and it puts a dot for you. Okay, so this one here will get the value of the landing light, and it's a boolean, so is it on or off, is it 1 or 0? And this is the second value. I want to compare the two. I want to find out if the landing light is off. So that's what this is saying. This is the comparison to make. Is it equal? So this is the reverse Polish notation. Normally we were used to putting one variable function and then another variable after it, but it works this way. Give it the two variables and ask it to perform the operation on it. So we don't know what that's going to be. It could be a 1 or a 0. Compare it to 0, and if they are the same, do this bit, and that's it within these curly brackets in the brace. These are called braces. Yeah. So if that's 0, do this, or else do this. And else is spelt like this in this language: no e on the end of it and no space after it. Same with the if, no space between the if and the curly brace. Okay, so let's deal with how this is working, what's going on here. If it's true, we want to send this value, we want to switch off a light. Which light is it we want to switch off? Well, it's being spoken to by the MIDI. So this greater than sign isn't greater than at all. It says send this to the MIDI, and it's sending it to MIDI device number 7. And it may be different on your setup. So if we look at the hardware and we show our MIDI devices, there's my X-Touch Mini coming in, and it's coming in using ID 2, and we don't need to worry about that. That gets found by Axis Nose itself. I've never had to worry about that, but I do have to look at this here. This is where I want to send it out to, and you can see that my X-Touch Mini has been given ID 7 by Axis Nose, possibly by, I don't know if it's a function of Windows, but that's where it's found it. I've got various other bits because I've got some music software on here that it uses MIDI as well. So it's allocated at 7, and it stays at 7 so long as you remember to switch on your hardware before you run Axis Nose. If you switch it on afterwards, it may not be in the right place if you switch it on later, because it may allocate these out. And I've had times where I've been fiddling with X-Touch Mini, can't work out why it's not working, and it's because I turned them on in the wrong order that time. So hardware on first and then run Axis Nose. It seems to work absolutely fine. So there it is. That's how I know it is device number 7. So over MIDI to device number 7, the command I'm sending is called a note on command. Even though I'm trying to switch it off, it's a note on command that we're sending, and it's always going to send it over channel 1. Doesn't matter where it is, what the ID is. All these global messages go out over channel 1. Everything else will ignore it because it's already been tagged that it has to go to MIDI device number 7. So only doesn't matter what other MIDI device you got plugged in, they'll ignore it. So it will go over channel 1, and we're trying to talk to bulb 0. And if I bring up these here, they are indexed 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 7, and then 8 to 15 here. So that's how we know which bulb it is. So for this one here, my landing light, I am going to be talking to this bulb here, and that's sending the command to bulb number 0. So if it's off, send the off command and it switches it off. Else, the only other thing it can be doing is being on. If it's not off, it must be on. So we'll send a 1 to that location, and so that switches the bulb on. So that is it. That's the command. Look at the variable, check to see if it's off. If it's off, send an off. If not, send an on, and that switches it on. And it's not permanently on as such. It goes around the loop again, it checks it again, it will send the 1 again. So it's kind of constantly being switched off and switched on in the background. That's how it works. That's what's happening. But that's the sort of bit you need to get your head around a little bit of how we're sending out. We're sending out over MIDI to which device, what command. It's always a note on command, and it's going over channel 1 to bulb 0. And that's what we're sending. We're sending on or off. You can actually send a 2. If you send a 2, it will flash on and off. So you can turn that from a steady, and it will put it into a kind of flash mode, and the flash is determined by the hardware. So you can't change the speed of the flash or anything like that. So here's the structure for the taxi light. The taxi light is just the same. Look at the variable for it, check if it's 0. If it is 0, then tell it to switch off. And the only difference here, you can see, is we're talking to the next bulb along. We're talking to bulb number 1. And if it's off, send a 0. Else, send a 1 to bulb number 1. The strobe light, that's the next one across. So that will be check the variable there, compare it to 0. If it's off, send it off to bulb number 2, or send it on to bulb number 2. Navigation light, again, that's the next one across. That's bulb number 3. Pitot heat is bulb number 4. So as you can imagine, when you're writing this, there's a lot of cutting, copying and pasting and editing, so you don't have to type an awful lot into it. And you're inserting these from the editor by doing the insert variable. So there's not a lot of typing to do. It actually works quite nicely. Some of them are a bit long, electrical master battery, so it's not going to appear particularly nicely on my screen. That one just about fits. And so that's really it for the top line. I've used the first 5 lights there, and then we start here on the bottom layer. So we start looking at the battery for bulb 8. That's the first one on the left hand side on the bottom row. Number 9 is going to be whether the alternator's switched on or not. Remember that you have to index the alternator, because there will, most aircraft have more than one alternator. So all the multi-engine ones would. So there we have alternator 1 that we're going to be checking here. The avionics master switch, again, that we need to tell it which one there is, because sometimes there are more than one, so we index that as number 1, and we send a 0 to it or a 1 to it, and that's bulb number. So that's bulb number 9. Bulb number 10 is the fuel pump switched on, and that's bulb number 11 for the fuel pump. Fuel selector. Again, the variables are getting longer and longer for some reason, but just the way it is. And that's bulb number 12 that's being affected. Parking brake indicator. That's there as well. So that's basically how you control the lights. You decide what function it is you want. And there's one for the starter. Is the starter on or not? Now, the starters only actually functions when you hold your finger on the button anyway, so it would light up anyway, but I've put it in for completeness. So that's really it for the script. I said you write the script. Let's bring Axis Nose back up again so you can see it for real. My scripts, my Robin LED script. And then it's quite simple. It's pretty much the same for that one. So if you want to reuse that one for another aircraft, you may have got a different layout on there, so you may have to change which bulb it is that you're talking to, but the basic function of the syntax is the same. So that's really it for the LEDs. It looks more complicated than it is. couple of times I've shown people they have forgotten to check which MIDI device it is that they're writing to. So that's been the kind of biggest headache that we've had, trying to work out what's wrong with that, is that they haven't checked on their hardware, or they've seen it here and not realised the significance of MIDI in and MIDI out. So that's the kind of problems that we've had. Okay, just a little bit to add at the end of this. Glad you stayed till the very end. I'm going to edit this in. I've had another look at the automated scripts here and how I can use a one shot at the beginning. I've learned a little bit extra as well, that if I click on here, that tells me that it has remembered the 500 millisecond requirement. So that's good, that's worked. What I've noticed is, if I bring up my X-Touch Mini, you can see that the avionics light is flashing the same that it's on, but it's actually switched off in the cockpit here. So that's the variable is actually on at the moment, but it's not functioning here because it needs to send a different command. It needs to send this. Bring this down a little bit. It needs to send this electrical execute procedure for it to actually work. But the switch is it thinks it's on because the variables is a light here, and it's actually off on the screen. So what I have done is in axes and O's. Let's go back to just axes and O's for the moment. I have written a script. My scripts, and it's the Robin avionics off, and all it does is turns the master switch off, and I'm going to run that as an aircraft automated switch. So let's go find that in my script. Robin avionics off, run that as a one shot at the beginning, so we'll add that in. One shot at the beginning. That script there is still repeating, but this is just one shot at the beginning to turn that avionics switch off, so that this light shouldn't be on this time. So I'm going to run that. Let's close that, and what I'll do is I'll just move this out of the way so you don't see that. But I will bring up my deck, and I'm going to just restart this flight. So if I escape, and I'm going to restart the flight, so this time it should run that script, and you see when we get into the cockpit that light should be off. So if I go ready to fly, and the avionics switch is now off, if I press the avionics switch, that now brings it on, and long press turns it off. So that script is definitely working. It's doing a one shot at the beginning, just turning that script off, so that switch off, so it actually matches what's happening on the screen. So I can see the switch is on, and the switch is now going off. Of course, the avionics aren't actually working because my battery switched off. I'll switch my battery on and do that again. My avionics, that's on, and now it's off. So that's all working absolutely fine. So just a little bit to add at the end of it.